Welcome to the Assembly Committee on Health and Human Services. Would the Secretary please call the roll?
Assemblywoman Gonzalez, Assemblywoman Gorlow, Assemblyman Gray, Assemblyman Hafen, Assemblyman Hibbets, Assemblyman Koenig, Assemblywoman Newby, Assemblyman Nguyen, Assemblyman Orenlicker, Assemblywoman Taylor, Assemblywoman Thomas, Chair Peters.
And I am here. We are in the middle of a busy week where folks are juggling several meetings happening at the same time. So we please mark our absent folks as present when they arrive after GA is adjourned. I'm going to go into some housekeeping items. Per usual, but always a good reminder, please silence your electronic devices to make sure that we're not interrupting folks as they're presenting and speaking. Members of the public may testify in a variety of ways, all of which are listed on the agenda. You may also submit public comment in writing, either in addition to testifying or in lieu thereof. Written public comment may be submitted before, during, or up to 24 hours after the meeting's adjournment. If you wish to testify in person, please sign in at the table by the door and leave a business card. If you do not wish to testify, you may also want to sign in so that we can get in touch with you as an interested party in the future. To ensure an orderly flow of discussion, all comments, questions, and responses must go through me. Also, committee members must be recognized by me before you can speak. Additionally, I ask our Zoom presenters to leave your cameras off and microphones muted unless it is your turn to present or I direct questions to you. When testifying in person, please turn the microphone on to speak and off to listen so we can get a clean recording for our minutes. With that, we'll move on to our agenda. We have 3 bills on the docket today. They are all Senator Scheibel bills, so it is Scheibel Day in HHS. We are going to take these in order, and we'll go ahead and start with Senate Bill 161. We'll open the hearing. Senate Bill 161 provides for the use of certain federal benefits to purchase menstrual products. Senator Scheibel, welcome.
Thank you so much, Chair Peters and committee, for having me. My name is Melanie Scheibel. I'm the state senator for District 9 and delighted to be in front of you today presenting these bills. We'll start with SB 161, which, as the chair mentioned, expands the uses for which certain federal benefits can be used. SB 161 refers specifically to the SNAP and WIC programs, the Supplemental Nutritional Assistance Program, and the Women, Infants, and Children's Program, which currently can only be used for food items. And so the way that SNAP and WIC funding works, which I just learned when I brought this bill, is that it is all federal dollars. Those dollars come from the federal government to the state, and then the state administers the SNAP or the WIC, the SNAP and the WIC program. And people who qualify for SNAP or WIC benefits apply through the state office. The state office determines their eligibility and determines what kinds of benefits they'll get to receive. To put it simply, those are what we normally see on EBT or electronic benefit transfer cards. They're like debit cards, and the SNAP or the WIC program will load onto the card it's both the dollar amount, but also the dollar amount is classified to be able to purchase particular items, which does not include pads, tampons, menstrual cups, any other period products. And so the purpose of SB 161 is to require the state agency that administers our SNAP and WIC funds to apply for a federal waiver in order to allow recipients of SNAP and WIC here in Nevada to utilize those funds for period products in addition to whatever else they are entitled to. The purpose here is not to create a new project or for the state to fund this, but simply to allow people who are already receiving these benefits to make their own choices about how their money is best spent. Some of you also heard SJR 5 in the Legislative Operations and Elections Committee, which is a companion piece to SB 161. SB 161 and SJR 5 work together, where SB 161 says if the federal government will allow us to do this, the state of Nevada will participate. SJR 5 says that we are going to ask the federal government to do this because they do not currently allow for the use of SNAP or WIC funds for menstrual products. So it is a project that I plan to take on in the interim to try to expand those benefits at the federal level. And with the passage of SB 161, 161, we will already have the framework in place for Nevadans to be able to utilize their SNAP and WIC funds to buy pads, tampons, menstrual cups, and similar hygiene products. And so with that, I'll walk through the bill. It's one section. The section says what I just said, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Sorry, I'm getting my list of questions together real quick. I'm going to start with Assemblyman Gray. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, it's a guy again asking about a girl thing. Question though, in all seriousness, do we have a waiver to use these benefits for, say, diapers at this point? You know, things that are directly, tied to the child?
Melanie Scheibel for the record. So on the WIC program, there is a public-private partnership with a nonprofit that does provide diapers at reduced or free cost to people who are receiving WIC benefits. But currently, there is not a voucher system in place for either diapers or menstrual products to allow people to utilize their federal benefits to purchase those items.
That partnership, that public-private partnership, is that statewide or is that restricted to one locale?
Melanie Scheibel for the record. I'm aware of a public-private partnership in Southern Nevada. I think there is a similar one in Northern Nevada, but I don't want to speak for a nonprofit that I don't run.
Thank you for the question. We talked about this, I believe, last session. Do you remember? It was last session, and the entities who do participate with this, the public-private partnership, were made comment on their programs and how they're utilized. So if you are interested, you can go back into the minutes from last session and look them up, or ask staff to help follow up with that. I have Assemblywoman Newby next.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman, and thank you, Senator, for this bill. I was lucky enough to see the sort of companion bill in legislative operations, and I'm supportive of it. My question is, though, sometimes these benefits, SNAP and WIC, are so kind of minuscule anyway. If and when the federal government would expand the use of them to menstrual products, would they simultaneously increase the amount that each person or family gets? Because as you know, these products are pretty expensive, and I hate to see them battling it out with food.
Melanie Scheibel for the record, and certainly I would hope so. I would hope that that would include an expansion. Either way, however, part of the purpose for bringing SB 161 is to empower people who receive benefits to use the money the way that they see fit. And especially in a community like ours, where we do have nonprofit organizations, fantastic nonprofit organizations that help supplement some of the federal dollars that we receive. You might have somebody in a position where they have another way to access food, but maybe no way at all to access menstrual products. So for that particular person, even if their benefits don't increase, it might be in their best interest to continue receiving food from, another source and be able to shift their SNAP funds from food to menstrual products.
Thank you. I have a question from Assemblywoman Taylor.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Senator. We're going to let you join this committee in a minute. We've had you here quite often, but thank you, and apologies, I made a restroom run, so I missed as you just got introduced, but I caught the bill, and thank you for bringing it. I think it's very, very important. I just want to clarify, because I'm not on the other committee. You said SJR 5 asked Nevada, says that Nevada will ask the federal government for this waiver.
Melanie Scheibel for the record, we're actually going to be asking the federal government to create a waiver. And I'll take you back a little bit more history. Illinois passed a similar bill about 2 years ago, and they've been unable to implement it because when they applied for a waiver with the federal government, they were denied. And as it turns out, you can't just apply for a waiver for anything at the federal government, even though states have tried. They have to have a designated waiver program to apply for. So the companion resolution is asking them to create that waiver program.
Okay, so if I may clarify, Madam Chair, thank you. So the waiver says we will create the program and then apply for the waiver, right? And then this allows the usage once we get the waiver, hopefully.
Melanie Scheibel, for the record, I think you said that right. And just
Okay.
to triple clarify, at the federal level right now, there is no waiver.
Right.
So we're asking the feds to create a waiver, and then we're going to apply for the waiver.
Okay.
and
So
then
we're going to create a
utilize it.
program first, and then ask the feds to.
So if there is no federal waiver, then SB 161 would be kind of latent unless and until there is, because the state doesn't have the funds to create its own separate program. And so hopefully, though, we will get the federal waiver and be able to.
Well, we'll be ready for it if we do get it. So.
Exactly.
And that's what this is all about.
as,
So
as my colleague Senator Spearman says, if you stay ready, you don't have to get ready.
stay ready. You don't have to get ready. That's right. Thank you so much, Senator. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for the questions. I love that this is novel and really thinking broadly about like family health and those fundamental needs of families. And I have a couple of questions. Other committee members, please let me know if you have questions as well. But could, in the interpretation, could this be used for like reusable hygiene products, such as period underwear or like the cup, the menstrual cup?
Melanie Scheibel, for the record, yes, absolutely could.
That sounds like a cost savings to me for folks, just being able to afford that piece. And then my other question was related to what you were just talking about with this, if the state could find funding to do this program, to stand this program up, or could obtain a private grant or other gift to stand this program up, would this legislation enable us to be able to add that to SNAP or WIC program-related benefits?
Melanie Scheibel, for the record, yes. And in fact, in working on this bill, I have had an opportunity to speak with our WIC and SNAP coordinators in Nevada who are neutral because they're a government agency, and also supportive of helping people on WIC and SNAP. And so, which is to say that we've also discussed some other options to look at in the interim, like a public-private partnership, being able to include vouchers for free or reduced period products with the EBT card, even if we can't put the money on the EBT card because it's not federally funded, finding some other ways around that to just create a more centralized one-stop shop for people to receive their federal benefits as well as increased access to period products.
I also see RAN in the room, and there are potential opportunities to work with our retail partners on some kind of coupon benefit or something that could be added to those folks who are eligible for WIC benefits or SNAP benefits. We do have another question from Assemblywoman Thomas.
Good afternoon, and thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Senator, for bringing this bill forward. My question actually, I see that it has to do with SNAP, but I was wondering, can it be expanded to like our women in prison, because the period underwear to me would satisfy a lot of things that that they're going through right now. So I was just wondering if this is inclusive.
Melanie Scheibel, for the record, I appreciate your question because I think that we face period poverty in a variety of different areas, including people who are incarcerated. I know one of your colleagues has a bill that I signed on to try to bring dignity to incarcerated people who menstruate. And so this bill in particular is limited to the WIC and SNAP program, but I'm certainly supportive of other measures to get more period products to more people who need them.
Yeah, similarly, last session, we addressed period products in our schools and ensuring that our students have equitable access to menstrual products, whether in the school-based locations.
Melanie Scheibel, may I make a comment on that? We did. We passed an amazing bill last session to require all schools to provide free period products in the restroom. And I have heard from some high school students and middle school students that that is not happening in every school. So I encourage you, if you have kids at the middle or high school level, ask them if their schools are following the law. And if they're not, make a call to your principal.
Thank you for the PSA. Are there other questions on the bill before we move on to testimony? Seeing none, thank you so much, Senator. We'll move into testimony. We will start with support testimony in our physical locations here in Carson and Las Vegas. I cannot see the room in Las Vegas, so please come up to the desk if you would like to provide testimony and support, and then we'll go to the phones. Please remember to state your name for the record. You may begin when you're ready.
Good afternoon, Chair and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Annette Magnus, and I'm the Executive Director of Battleborn Progress. We are here in support of SB 161, which would allow federal SNAP and WIC benefits to be used to purchase menstrual products. This is a simple bill that would go a long way to ensure that all Nevadans who experience menstruation, who may be collecting federal benefits through these programs, would be able to access essential health care products if they need it. We thank the sponsors of this bill for introducing this measure to help lessen the pink tax that those who need these products are forced to pay, which is unfair and discriminatory. We urge your support. Thank you.
Thank you. Please go ahead.
Hello, committee. My name is Elise Monroy Marsala with Bell's Case Government Affairs. I'm here today on behalf of our client, the Nevada Public Health Association. We would like to thank Senator Scheibel for bringing this bill forward, as it will increase equity of access for needed sanitary items. If I could just take a second to take off my Bells and Case hat and put on my Elise Monroy Marsala hat, I would like to tell you all that I help to run a food pantry in Sparks called the Community Food Pantry. This last year we fed about 45,000 people. And one of the things that we noticed when we started the pantry about 12 years ago was people came in asking for toilet paper, pads, tampons, diapers, things like that. So now those are things that we fundraise for as part of our pantry, and we're able to donate or to hand those out. So I just wanted to verify, not that it needed any verification or validation for you, that these are decisions that people are making. As inflation goes up, as housing costs goes up, the budget that is cut is the food budget, and then all those other things that you buy, cleaning things to keep your body and yourself clean too. So the Community Food Pantry is working to fundraise to help people who come to us, but increasing these types of benefits to allow SNAP and WIC to be purchased, those things to be purchased. I'm running out of steam, sorry. We support the bill, thank you.
Thank you. Please go ahead.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair. Brian Walker, Senior Vice President of the Retail Association of Nevada. We too want to thank Senator Scheibel. I think in a weird set of circumstances, Rand has been unable due to a scheduling conflict to be at any of the tables so far on this bill. But we do want to make sure that we are in favor. I could not say anything better than my two colleagues said as well, other than we are prepared, and I think the supply chain is capable of being able to answer this. And we look forward to the Senator's fight in Washington and being able to then implement in Nevada. So thank you.
Oh, and I bet Rand's going to be a part of that fight, huh? Thank you. Seeing no one else come up to the table here in Carson City and no one at the table in Las Vegas, BPS, would you check the public line for support testimony on SB 161?
To testify in support of Senate Bill 161, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue.
Thank you, Chair Peters and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Charles Chodison, CHARCHRIST, and I'm a legislative assistant with One API Nevada, advocating for the fast-growing Asian American Pacific Islander population here in the great state of Nevada. I am here to show our support for SB 161, and we just want to say ditto and echo a lot of the support comments from our colleagues. Another thing I wanted to mention is that our sister organization, Asian Community Development Council, ACDC, works with a lot of SNAP clients, and so this would increase applications for SNAP and just increase access overall to, essential needs that, everyday Nevadans need. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Before you go, oh, maybe we lost him already. We had some technical difficulty hearing his name here in Carson City, so we'll have to maybe dredge that up. Next caller, please.
Chair, there are no other callers to testify in support at this time.
Thank you so much. Okay, we'll move into opposition. Is there anyone in Carson City or Las Vegas who'd like to provide opposition testimony on SB 161? Please come up to the table. Seeing no one coming up in Carson City and no one in Las Vegas, we'd move to the phones. BPS, is there anyone on the phones for opposition testimony on SB 161?
To testify in opposition to Senate Bill 161, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no callers to testify in opposition.
Thank you so much. We'll move into neutral testimony. Is there anyone in Carson City or Las Vegas who'd like to provide neutral testimony? Seeing none, BPS, would you please check the line for neutral testimony on SB 161?
To testify in neutral for Senate Bill 161, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no callers to testify in neutral at this time.
Thank you so much. I would invite the sponsor to the table for closing remarks if you have any. All right. Thank you so much. I have a couple of ideas on adding some language to make sure the state could implement this program if the federal government doesn't and we end up with some money. So I'll talk to you offline about that. We'll close the hearing on Senate Bill 161 and move on to our next bill, Senate Bill 315. Senator, welcome again to the table. Thank you so much for being here. Senate Bill 315 makes revisions relating to the rights of persons with disabilities and persons who are aged. Please remember to state your name when you speak for our records. You may begin when you're ready.
All right. Again, Melanie Scheibel for the record. Thank you so much for having me in Assembly Health and Human Services. I am presenting now to you SB 315 along with my colleagues Eric Jimenez and Dora Martinez, making sure I got that right. And SB 315 has been a labor of love to create two important statutory protections for groups of people in Nevada. Section 1 of the bill pertains to people with disabilities and who are aged. And Section 2 of the bill, which I think is technically Section 3, Section 3 pertains to students who are what we call in transition. So those are students who are 14 years or older who are getting ready to leave the public school system and embark on their independent adult lives and are receiving transition services to become equipped to do that. So I just want to go over some broad strokes about the bill and the reason for bringing the bill, and then I will let my colleagues follow up on some of the more specifics and some of the reasons for it. But I'll speak first to the first section. The first section could be called, a Bill of Rights for people with disabilities. And the purpose of SB 315 is to ensure that people who are already receiving services from the government pertaining to their age or their disability are able to have a say in how and when and where they receive those benefits. So SB 315 has been very carefully crafted along with the administrative departments that would have to implement the bill, along with our legal counsel, to ensure that we are not providing anybody with additional rights to services. What the bill says is that for people who are receiving those services, service providers have to include them in the conversations. So a person who is receiving services related to their disability has to have a say in where they receive those services, what kinds of services they receive, when they receive them. They have to be an active participant in planning their own lives. It also ensures that they're treated with dignity and respect in whatever location they may be, in whatever context they might encounter someone who is providing services or working on case management or planning. Section 1 of the bill is modeled after NRS 159.328. That is the Protected Persons Bill of Rights. And as much as practicable, this language mirrors the language there regarding treating people with respect and dignity, providing them with autonomy, allowing them to make decisions as much as possible. And then, of course, where there are some differences, you'll see some differences in the language of SB 315. But really, the purpose here is not to come at this with a hammer or a stick, but to come at it with the carrot and to say that, you know, if you're a person who provides services to those with disabilities or those who are aged, here are the guidelines for the way that you're supposed to provide them. And here is a person-centered approach to ensuring that we provide adequate services to people who are entitled to them. And again, I'll leave it to my colleagues to explain in a little bit more depth kind of the purpose of making this shift in focus and why it's important to have this actually spelled out in law. I'll move briefly now to Section 3. Section 3, like I mentioned in my opening remarks, is a Bill of Rights for students in transition. So for students who already have an IEP, an independent educational plan, when they start to reach that age where they're getting ready to graduate from school and go on to college or get a job or vocational training or whatever that might be, again, it is imperative that they are involved in those decisions and that the adults around them are not making decisions without taking into consideration what that person actually wants, needs, desires, and is capable of doing. And so Section 3 is aimed at ensuring that for students, we, again, take that person-centered approach that focuses on the needs of the person who's receiving services and their desires and makes them an active participant in planning for their future. There's also an amendment to the bill that you will see on Nellis, and that amendment is fairly straightforward. The purpose of the amendment is to allow or to require for school IDs that include a phone number for students to call in a crisis setting to make that phone number 988, as opposed to what is currently in law that just says a local crisis center or crisis hotline. I will, I'm not going to hide the ball here. We have heard that this may not be germane to this bill. So I am going to try in this hearing to explain why it is germane, because in fact, I do believe that it is germane to the bill. It's not a secret that I was approached after the Senate hearing on the bill with the suggestion to add this, and I was more than willing to do it because I think that it is incredibly important for all students, whether they are receiving services or whether they have an IEP or not, that we are providing them with accurate, good information that can help prevent suicide particularly, but any kind of mental health crisis. And so as we as a community move towards utilizing 988 and making it as ubiquitous as 911 so that everybody knows where to call when someone is in a mental health emergency, I think that there is nobody who needs that more than our students. And so with that, I'll turn it over to my co-presenters.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and Senator Scheibel, who just happens to be my favorite senator. Please don't tell Senator Harris, or all my bills will go die. But Eric Jimenez, for the record, so incredibly proud to be here today. Just want to clarify for the record, and then we'll talk about the importance of the bill. There are two amendments that we're contemplating. One is a proposed amendment from me that is on Nellis that is the result of some stakeholder conversations we've had with the Nevada Governor's Council on Developmental Disabilities and the statewide Independent Living Council. And then we have a second amendment that is kind of being contemplated, but I believe that's not on Nellis yet, so just so no one gets confused. But Eric Jimenez, for the record, this bill has been a product of a long time coming. For those of you who know me, I started in this building in 2013 and have been advocating for people with disabilities in the legislature, and I think we've made some tremendous strides. I think for too long, not intentionally, but people with disabilities have largely been left out of the legislative process. Sometimes it's hard to organize. You can't hire a lobbyist. I think there's some powerful interests at play in disability services, and sometimes there's big money operations behind those as well. So this bill is a product of conversations I had with Regent Sam Lieberman, who is a friend and mentor of mine and is sadly no longer with us, and a promise I made that we would do everything we can to, one, increase the way that we think about providing services for people under the home and community-based services waiver, and then two, how we could start to change the conversation for our students so they could understand that just because they have a disability didn't mean that they had to settle for less or settle for substandard options. And I think where we get in this bill is a huge step forward, and I think it's probably one of the most important pieces of legislation I've worked on in my 10 years in this building. But to walk through the individual sections, Section 1 is incredibly important because we have a Supreme Court decision that was decided in 1999 called Olmsted versus LC, which basically said that under the Americans with Disabilities Act, states and federal governments, when providing services to people with disabilities, had to do so in the least restrictive environment. And as we've moved from the 90s to now, we're starting to change the way we think about how we provide services. And before, someone with a disability would have had to have worked in a sheltered workshop and get jobs and vocational training through a very segregated setting. And we're seeing new opportunities for people with disabilities to work remotely, to participate in business and commerce, and go to school in different ways that we had thought unimaginable before. So Section 1 says if you are receiving services on the home and community-based services waiver, as part of those services, that we would do so in the manner that puts the person first. So saying someone would have the right to say if they wanted to voice grievances, they would have the right to have relationships with whomever they choose, and I think some things that we've talked about in this building over the last few years that would be very important. Section 3, which I actually am super excited about in this bill, tries to solve a problem that we're seeing with students' voice in the process on their IEPs. So under the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, or IDEA, many of the rights afforded to students are actually covered by the parent because a student is a minor, so if a parent had a grievance, they would need to engage in that IEP process. In conversations we've had with the Office of Inclusive Education, with the Department of Education, they have been striving for how do we help students get a little more ownership in their education? How can we help them actively participate in that IEP meeting? If they want to select different members of that IEP team if it's not working for them, how can we do that? And we don't necessarily have the tools available for us today. So this is ultimately trying to solve that issue, to give students a little bit more empowerment and understanding that they do not have to settle for less. And then I think finally, something that's broad, and I'll let Dora and Santa on the Zoom talk, but we see kids with disabilities. We had some students visit us in the treasurer's office who were blind about a month ago. And we have kids today who are just being failed in our school system. And we pass laws, and we have dedicated teachers who want to deliver services for these kids, but they just feel like it isn't reaching them. And we can pass as many laws as we want, but sometimes it just doesn't filter down. We have kids today in our school system who are thinking about killing themselves every single day because they can't get the right amount of services to try to make something that they want to see in their life. And I think this bill goes a huge way in saying we agree from Carson City, we think you should have ownership in that education, and we're committed to making sure that you have that ownership and person-centered planning throughout the process, which is just why you see the changes in Section 1. So with that, I don't want to talk anymore, but I think Dora has a lot of thoughts and opinions and would love to say some things.
Miss Martinez, thank you so much for being here. Are you able to feel the button up there to turn on the microphone? Perfect.
Oh, this is somebody's laptop. Okay. Good afternoon, Chair, and the committee, and thank you, Senator Scheibel, and my hero, Eric Jimenez, the able guy. My name is Dora Martinez, and I do represent the Nevada Disability Peer Action Coalition. As you can see, I have no paper in front of me, and my dog ate my homework. But Mr. Eric Jimenez is correct on what they're saying, and Senator Scheibel. I am a blind mom, and none of my kids are disabled. Sometimes I feel that's unfortunate because they make faces at me and I can't tell. But it is true. Sometimes a lot of students and people with disability have been left out of the communication in all this time. And we are here to speak for the students because they are our future. And they need to feel included and at the table and talk about their education because they're going to be leading this country. You'll never know. And so it is imperative that I hope that you all support this bill. It is inclusive and diversity and have equity and accessibility for all. And it's like what we always say in the disability community, nothing about us without us. You cannot, accessibility for me does not mean it's going to be accessible for Santa Perez or someone who is hard of hearing. We have different specialized needs. And in order for those needs to be met, we need to be at the table. We do not want someone who is non-disabled, and I do not mean that in disrespectful, it's just how it is, non-disabled person to tell us what they think is good for us, and this goes out to vocational rehabilitation. Sorry, I don't know if I'm supposed to say that. But I'm dealing with them, and they need to know, because I'm blind and I know what's best for me. Nobody else does. I know that, no, I think I'm going to stop. And thank you so much. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you for your comments. Do we have other folks that are presenting?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Ah.
please go ahead.
Santa Perez. Esperez9501@aol.com. Chair and committee members, thank you for letting me speak to you today. My name is Santa Perez and I am a member of the Nevada Governor's Council on Developmental Disabilities. I would like to encourage you to approve SB 315. The ADA gave the disability community a great springboard to ensure our rights as American citizens, but we need more. As a person with a significant disability, I need my Medicaid waiver to survive, but that does not mean I have to give up my human rights. I like having choices regarding my life. They may be right, or they may be wrong, but it is my life. When people receive waivers through Medicaid, there is so much that is out of our control. The Bill of Rights for people with disabilities will ensure that we have a say in navigating our lives. We want the same things as everyone else. We want the right to choose the way we live, love, play, and work in our communities. We want our students to be informed about the services that are in their communities, so that, when they are adults, they can be informed citizens and contribute to their society. We want the best for our kids, but they need to know every available option. I hope that you consider your support on SB 315. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Perez, for your testimony and support today on the bill. As that If we don't have anything else to add, we can move into questions. I have a few questions from folks. We're going to go ahead and start with Assemblyman Nguyen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This bill resonate with me in so many different ways. So thank you, Senator Scheibel, for bringing this together. As I was listening to you and Mr. Jimenez, as well as Ms. Martinez and Ms. Perez, kind of went back down memory lane a little bit. I know this is different from the struggle that the disability community faces every day, but I remember as an immigrant coming to this country at the age of 11, and at that time the school that I attended, 5th grade, didn't have English language learning programs. So as an immigrant coming to this country with 0 English, I had to figure it out. Just figure it out, sink or swim, right? And that was struggle. I think the first year being in the United States was one of the most quiet years in my life because I couldn't speak or being heard because I didn't know how to navigate that. So even though it's a very small part comparing to the experiences that the disability community go through, I just want you all to know that it hit me harder than I thought. So with that, I want to thank Ms. Martinez for reminding me this and a couple of other bills that we heard a few weeks ago, the importance of language access into this movement that we're doing, just trying to make sure that our disabilities communities are not left behind. So in terms of the Nevadans who experiencing access issues to some of these things that we're trying to change and make it better, where would they be in this part? I know that there were mention of American Sign Language and other parts in this bill, but I just want to make sure that we include the language access piece from communities that speak other language other than English that also have disabilities. Where can they find the places at the table for them so that they can be a part of our society in a meaningful way as well?
Melanie Scheibel for the record, and I forgot to talk to Eric before the hearing about a possible amendment on language access, because I do agree. I think that, somebody who is receiving services on a Medicaid waiver should be able to communicate in a language that they understand, be it sign language or be it Japanese or be it some other language. And I think broadly it is encompassed in the bill because it includes communication with people in a meaningful manner in the way that they see fit. But it doesn't specifically call out language access, and I think that is, it would be completely appropriate. Although I will also say this language was negotiated with a lot of stakeholders, so I'm taking that privilege as an elected sponsor of the bill to say that I'm open to it, but I'm open, but it would have to be a discussion.
Thank you, Eric Jimenez, for the record, if I can just take a point of privilege. I think we would be happy to incorporate any amendments on language access. I think this is a tremendous opportunity to talk about language access in the disability community because it's different. You have American Sign Language, you have Braille. If a kid has a disability and they need some sort of language access, that would be covered within their individualized education plan. But any way that we can strengthen those services, I think, is really important. I think I was one of the first people to get Braille on my business cards. So I think we have some bigger strides to make as a state government with how we can kind of also do language access, but we'd be happy to work with you, Assemblyman.
Thank you, Senator, for that intent, and thank you, Mr. Jimenez. And I just want to, again, applaud all of the work that you all been doing, and as a immigrant in this building, one of the few, I appreciate your work, and please look to me for any support I can provide. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for sharing your story, Assemblyman Nguyen, as well. I think that is, look at you now. Okay, I've got a couple more questions on my sheet, but please let me know if you have other questions, folks. Assemblyman Gray, please go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. and I may be way off base on this one, but I'm going to assume that maybe sometimes people with intellectual disabilities, as they become 18, they will still have a guardianship in place with somebody to help them with decisions. What will happen under the Bill of Rights portion if there's a disagreement between the guardian and the individual?
Thank you for the question, Assemblyman, through the chair. To you, Eric Jimenez, for the record. There are different types of guardianships, and there's a lot of people in the room that are smarter than me on this. Sometimes they are over the person, sometimes they are over the estate, sometimes they are over both. Typically, when someone is receiving services for that, the guardianship, which is directed by a court, would be the law of the land there. With that being said, even if someone's under the care of a guardian, we see a lot of people who were placed under guardianships in the late 80s and the 90s who arguably today wouldn't have been placed under one because of some different rules and restrictions that we have. So trying to meet the person halfway, I think, makes sense, but if there is something to the health and safety of the person, that's why we have guardianships in place.
Thank you. Assemblyman Hibbets, I have you next.
Thank you, Chair. So looking through the bill, and I'm working off first reprint, and then also coordinating that with Mr. Jimenez's proposed amendment. Looking through the bill, there's nothing in here that I disagree with. I have a question, though, about if you look at Section 1, subsection 2, subsection B, and Section 3, subsection 2, subsection C. Both of them refer to be treated with respect and dignity, which I think we all can all agree that everybody should be treated with respect and dignity. My question is how do we legislate that? For example, if I'm walking down the hallway and I see Mr. Jimenez and I say, "Hi, Eric," is me referring to him by first name disrespectful? It may be to him. It may not be to the person standing next to him. Do you get where I'm going? I don't understand how we can legislate respect.
Melanie Scheibel, for the record. This is one of those clauses that was taken directly from the Bill of Rights for Protected Persons. It is NRS 159.328, subsection 1, subsection K, that they have the right to be treated with dignity and respect. And the purpose of including that is to ensure that if somebody is treated in the opposite manner, that they have a legislative protection to turn to. And it's not a legislative protection in the way that we think of a lot, but not like you can file a lawsuit or arrest somebody, but it just says that if somebody feels that they are being disrespected by their care team or by a particular provider, that they have the right to be free from that disrespect. I'm not saying that it's not subjective, but we have subjective areas of the law throughout the Nevada revised statutes. And so if we can agree that people should be treated with dignity and respect, then I don't see why we can't put it into law.
And then Eric Jimenez, for the record, just for a quick follow-up, Assemblyman, I think this portion was taken from two bills. One is from Massachusetts and one is from Ohio, modeled similarly after the protected persons, but they have a Bill of Rights for people with disabilities. That's where this dignity and respect language came from. I think the provision in Section 1, subsection 2, sub S, the voicing of grievances, I think this feeds into, subsection B feeds into S. So if someone, let's just say their caseworker isn't treating them with dignity and respect, maybe that's somewhere they could file a grievance with that. We hear you on maybe we may not be able to legislate anything or everything, but I do think having some provisions on respect and dignity is amicable.
Thank you, and your answer actually answered my follow-up before I could ask it. Thanks.
Thank you. I think it would be interesting to go back and listen to the minutes on that particular statute when it was implemented, to listen to the arguments made on that case. Are there other questions from the committee before we move on? I had a quick question about the general definition of people with a disability. Do we have a definition of this. Is it anyone with a IEP? Does it include only folks who have, like, where do we go to look for that?
Yeah, Eric Jimenez for the record. And so this language in Section 3 was crafted by the Office of Inclusive Education with the Department of Education. The intention here, and I believe it's stated through the bill, is that they have to be receiving transition services through an individualized education plan. So we wanted to define the population of students. We recognize that there are other groups of students. You have 504 plans, which I know Assemblywoman Taylor is probably familiar with a lot of the work on the restorative justice side. This protections wouldn't apply to those students. We wanted to start here and understand that this could evolve over time, and if we needed to expand student populations, we could.
Thank you. I appreciate that response. Are there any other questions? All right, we'll move into testimony. Thank you so much. I will start with support testimony in our physical locations and then move to the phone. Thank you again, Ms. Perez, for joining us today. I see some folks coordinating themselves in Carson City. Please remember to state your name for the record before you begin. Go ahead.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon, Chair Peters and members of the committee. My name is Catherine Nielsen. I'm the Executive Director of the Nevada Governor's Council on Developmental Disabilities. I want to first start with we appreciate Mr. Jimenez and Senator Scheibel's amendment to include our council and the statewide Independent Living Council, as we are the entities federally identified to provide information and resources to this community. I want to remind you that people with disabilities are just that, people. And thus they should be afforded the same rights, freedoms, and protections as anyone else. Disability rights are human rights. Everyone deserves to be included in all facets of community living. Human rights are the basic rights and freedoms that belong to every person in the world, from birth until death, regardless of race, sex, nationality, ethnicity, language, religion, or any other status. Human rights include the right to life and liberty, freedom from slavery and torture, freedom of opinion and expression, the right to work and education, and many other things. Everyone is entitled to these rights without discrimination. They apply regardless of where you're from, what you believe in, or how you choose to live your life. These basic rights are based on shared values like dignity, fairness, equality, respect, and independence. These values are defined and protected by law. The DD Act, or the Developmental Disabilities and Bill of Rights Act, states that disability is a natural part of the human experience that does not diminish the rights of individuals with developmental disabilities to live independently, to exert control and choice over their own lives, and to fully participate in and contribute to their communities through full integration and inclusion in economic, political, social, cultural, and educational mainstreams of the United States society. That people with even the most significant disabilities are capable of independence, self-determination, productivity, integration, and inclusion in all areas of community life. This Bill of Rights for people with intellectual, developmental, or physical disabilities cements the framework of our forefathers that was put into place when they outlined basic human rights. I applaud the Senator Scheibel, Eric Jimenez, and the members of the public body for moving this piece of legislation, which is arguably the most important piece of legislation this session, forward. If you have any questions, you can contact our council. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Martinez, would you like to go next?
This is Dora Martinez. I ditto. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you again for being here. Please go ahead.
Good afternoon, Chair and Committee. My name is Kiera Capurro, spelled Kierracapurro, representing McDonald Carano on behalf of the Nevada Blind Children's Foundation. We support SB 315 and believe this will improve the livelihoods, education, and services to disabled and blind Nevadans. Earlier this session, teenage students of the Nevada Blind Children's Foundation visited the legislature. Hearing their stories illuminated the disparity of the blind citizens in this state. Nevada is one of 7 states without a school for the blind, making Nevada one of the most underserved states in the entire country. Some blind children get placed in special education classes, while the only disability they have is blindness or visual impairment. It can take years for these students to get out of these classes, limiting their educational growth and lowering their chances of being accepted to college, a statistic that is already too low for those who are blind. Luckily, the Nevada Blind Children's Foundation keeps students in their program until they are 22 years of age. The foundation particularly appreciates the section that allows outside agencies to participate in the development of IEPs, as it would help the foundation be more involved in students' educational path. By supporting this bill, you would help these individuals become more self-supporting and independent, and will save the state revenue in the long run. We would like to thank the bill sponsor as well as Eric Jimenez. Thank you.
Thank you. Please go ahead.
Good afternoon, Chair Peters and members of the committee. My name is Jesse Wadhams with the law firm of Black & Wadhams, today representing the 988 Awareness Project. First, let me thank Senator Scheibel, and I hate to say this on the record, but perhaps more importantly, Eric Jimenez for his advocacy in a bill like this. And we support the bill wholeheartedly. We did approach Senator Scheibel and Mr. Jimenez with an idea. The 988 Project is a group of high school students that have come up with an awareness outreach campaign for suicide, this 988 suicide prevention line. And the linkage we sort of came up with was this outreach, particularly say in subsection 3 to G about common information, subsection 3 to J about receiving information that is common to all outreach. Having the 988 number helps make people aware of that service. And so, again, we support this bill to the extent that, that this amendment can be considered. We appreciate the committee's consideration and leave it at that.
I appreciate that, and we can take a conversation offline. There may be a couple other options that are workable for that one too, if we can't make it fit into this one. Please go ahead.
Chair, members of the committee, Jonathan Norman with the Nevada Coalition of Legal Service Providers. We represent adults who are protected persons, proposed protected persons, and we also assist with less restrictive alternatives for those adults so that they can maintain as much freedom as they're able to have. I also represented kids in foster care, and we have an education advocacy program. And, you know, already in law we have the Foster Care Bill of Rights, we have the Protected Persons Bill of Rights, and these are touchstones that you know, we can point to and that our clients can read about, that lets them know that their voice is important. And when I read through this bill, I think it reflects everything that legal services attorneys around the state fight for every day for their clients. So I'm really proud to support this legislation and thank the sponsor and Mr. Jimenez. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. My name is Marlene Lockhart, and I'm representing SEIU 1107. All of the wonderful things and the positive things that will occur because of this bill, I think, have been said. So we also support the bill and urge your positive consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no one else come up to the table in Carson City and no one in Las Vegas, we go to the phones. BPS, is there anyone on the public line for support testimony on SB 315?
To testify in support of Senate Bill 315, please press star 9 now to take your place in the
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Stephen Cohen for the record. Stephen with a V. Cohen is in the Assemblywoman, no known relation. Ditto. Thank you, and I yield.
Thank you. Next caller, please.
Good afternoon, Chair and members of the committee. For the record, Will Pregman representing Battleborn Progress. I am rising in strong support today of SB 315, persons with intellectual, developmental, or physical disabilities who are receiving home or community care deserve to live with dignity and respect. We want to recognize that a large part of the inspiration for this bill was the Titan of Education Advocacy, former BVP board chair, Regent Sam Lieberman. Those who are privileged enough to know Sam understand that he faced unique challenges from his own struggle with a disability. Throughout his life, he blazed a trail for the rights of people with disabilities that inspired the legislation that you see before you today. People with disabilities who receive care, among other items in this bill, should have the ability to manage their own finances, have their personal records handled with confidentiality, be treated as equal citizens, and have access to education they wish to pursue. The rights of people with disabilities is fundamental, just as any other civil right. We thank Senator Scheibel for sponsoring this bill and Eric Jimenez for his work on this policy. We urge you to support SB 315 in the memory of Regent Sam Lieberman and for the people of Nevada. Thank you.
Thank you. Next caller, please.
Chair, there are no other callers to testify in support at this time.
Thank you so much. We'll go into opposition testimony in our physical locations, Carson City first, seeing no one, and in Las Vegas, I'm seeing no one come up to the table. BPS, would you check the public line for opposition testimony on Senate Bill 315?
To testify in opposition to Senate Bill 315, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no callers to testify in opposition at this time.
Thank you so much. We'll move into neutral testimony. Is there anyone in Carson City or Las Vegas who'd like to provide neutral testimony on Senate Bill 315? Seeing no one come up to the tables, BPS, would you check the public line for neutral testimony on Senate Bill 315?
To testify in neutral for Senate Bill 315, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no callers to testify in neutral at this time.
Thank you so much. We'll invite the sponsor. Thank you all for the presentation. We'll go ahead and close the hearing on Senate Bill 315 and move into the hearing for Senate Bill 317. Senate Bill 317 establishes provisions relating to resources for persons experiencing homelessness. Welcome again, Senator. Please go ahead when you're ready.
Thank you so much. I'm still Melanie Scheibel, still the state senator for District 9 in Southern Nevada, and pleased to present to you SB 317 today. SB 317 is not a complicated bill, and what it does is it fills a gap that we currently have for people who are experiencing homelessness to have a permanent address. There's nothing in law that prevents a 501c3, a nonprofit organization, from allowing a person experiencing homelessness to utilize that place as their home address. And we currently have provisions in law that allow somebody who actually resides at a place that provides services such as a homeless shelter or a temporary housing situation to utilize that address to vote. But there's still a gap that comes up, especially in the areas described in subsection 7, section 7, subsection 2. When people go to apply for public assistance, they have to fill out forms that indicate that they, swear, affirm, they take an oath, or under penalties of perjury that everything that they're including is accurate and truthful. And so we wanted to make sure with SB 317 that when people are filling out these applications for public assistance and the other activities listed underneath, that when they put a service provider as their permanent address, they are allowed to do that because it can be very difficult to acquire new housing, employment, or public assistance when you don't have a home address. And so what SB 317 does is it spells out clearly in law that any 501c3 organization that provides services to people experiencing homelessness can authorize those people receiving the services to utilize the organization's address as their permanent physical address. And so that is briefly what the purpose is of SB 317, and I will hand it over to Mr. Jimenez for some additional context.
Hello again, Eric Jimenez for the record with the Treasurer's Office. Senate Bill 317 is a product of the Nevada Recovers listening tour, which several of you participated in. Thank you. You may recall under the last gubernatorial administration and under Treasurer Conine, we undertook the largest public engagement tour in state history when the state received $6.7 billion from the American Rescue Plan, 2.7 of that. 2.7 billion you all are familiar through the IFC process. And the idea was, how could we go to every single community that we could, over 123 events over 87 days. It was a very long tour, but we went to communities and we listened. And we said, what can we fund? What types of programs would you like to see? And also, do you have any good ideas where government could step in and potentially help? And while this wasn't a funding request, it came directly from a constituent in Reno during some meetings we had with homeless service providers and the unhoused community. And they said, I'm really struggling. I can't get an address to apply for employment, to get social services. And as we went through this process, we found out that you can apply for a P.O. box, but it is a complicated process. You have to contact your local postmaster, and you can only do it at specific USPS locations. So we decided to model this language after some similar policies that are coming out of the city of Los Angeles for how can we make it just a little bit easier for our unhoused population to use a temporary address for very limited purposes to help get them out of potentially a bad situation. So that's the genesis of the bill. We're very thankful to the constituent who I will not embarrass in this hearing, but it just goes to show that all ideas are good ideas, and maybe you find yourself in front of the legislature. So thank you.
Thank you. Is there anything else before we move into questions? All right, folks. Do we have questions today? I have Assemblyman Nguyen. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Senator, I promise this is not a language access question. I do have other, because I am in the nonprofit space, and I want to make sure that this is a great way to really help those that are experiencing homelessness, having the nonprofit being part of this solution. My question is more on the technicality of the bill. We know that for residency purposes, there are several categories that can think of, like for tuition, you have to have a year established before you are considered a resident. For voting, it's 30 days, or change of address, or run for office, etc. is 30 days. So this particular one is 6 months. I just wanted to kind of figure out how can we establish or determine the 6 months period, and if the persons are able to prove that part, because there was not going to be anything else that they could base this time frame on. So just wanted to get that clarified.
Thank you for the question, Assemblyman Eric Jimenez. For the record, we actually had a little bit of this conversation over on the Senate side, and I want to make one thing abundantly clear. We are not requiring people to have identification cards in this bill, although it is one option. But we did want to figure out a way to make sure that we had Nevada residents who were applying for temporary addresses. And understanding it's a kind of a balancing act there. We didn't want people coming over from California saying they were a Nevada resident and using a homeless service provider to gain access to our services. So we felt 6 months was just a nice, easy number that could show that someone was here. Functionally, I think that could happen kind of one of two ways. We've seen attestation be a very useful tool when we've done aid programs through nonprofits. So most of our pandemic aid that you saw out of the Treasurer's Office, whether that was rental assistance or small business assistance, was using attestation for determining whether people were located in Nevada and needed help for the COVID pandemic. So I think you would see something there. I think part two is, if that person has a relationship with that homeless service provider, they could verify that. We are totally open if maybe 6 months isn't the right number. I think we're totally amenable to that, but we wanted to figure out a number that made sense.
Thank you for that. Quick follow-up, Chair. So I just want to make sure that we have the ability for the citizen or the person using the service to be able to prove that, right? So if the 6 months is in statute, I want to make sure that the organization complying with the law be able to have someone prove that part. Now, if 6 months is hard to prove, yeah, I would agree with you that we need to look at something be easier for folks to be able to attest to the fact that they've been here for whatever time of frame that we agree to by the time this is done.
And then just one final point, Eric Jimenez for the record. Assemblyman, you'll see in Section 8, this gives the Division of Welfare and Supportive Services the ability to adopt regulations necessary. So, if it was the committee's pleasure, we could clarify what that looks like, or as we work through the regulatory process, figuring out what that residency requirement might need to look like. We'd be happy to do that.
And thank you for that. You just mentioned that to me in that part, and I did see an or part of the bill, so that is a good way to also handle that too. But in terms of having the ability of using one or the other, I want to make sure that we reduce the barrier for those folks who have to prove the other part, and ensuring that we can help them and not put more obstacle in front of them. So thank you for that, and thank you, Senator. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for the question, and actually, I wonder if there would be or if there has been a discussion to this point of consideration for like a discretionary term for the provider of homeless services to acknowledge that the person has an intent to reside for a period of time in Nevada, because if a person's coming and they're looking for a full-time job, or they have children in the region, or there are periods of time in which that makes sense that their intent is really to reside in the state of Nevada, and that discretion could be held by the homeless service entity. I don't know if you've had that conversation, or if maybe that would be worth having to just give a little bit more like leeway on that 6-month period of time for residency requirement, or add an or in there, residency or at the discretion of for an intent to reside or something along those lines.
Melanie Scheibel, for the record, I think that's a great idea. I don't know if it would need an amendment to do that. I would be open to that. And I think that it touches on a point that I wanted to make, which is that this is all voluntary as well. We're not saying that homeless service providers have to allow people to utilize their locations as a permanent address. And so the idea is to empower them to do that. And I think that, your point is well taken. I'd be happy to discuss it further.
Thank you. Other questions from folks? All right, we'll move into testimony then. Thank you so much for being here. We will go ahead and move into support testimony on Senate Bill 317 in our physical location, starting here in Carson City and moving to Las Vegas. Please come up to the table, and then we'll move to the phones. Please remember to state your name for the record. You may begin when you're ready.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, committee, staff. My name is Zach Bucher with the City of Las Vegas. Here today in support. Happy to say that the City of Las Vegas, with our courtyard, our homeless resource center, we already allow people to use that as an address, and we've seen the benefits of doing that. So we think this is a good bill, and we're here today in support. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the committee. For the record, Mindy Elliott with Flynn Judici Government Affairs, today representing the Nevada Housing Coalition. And if there's a housing bill, I'm probably in front of you. As we're hearing a lot of housing bills, and as we look to a seamless process for individuals to go from unhoused to housed, we have to start somewhere, and there's different entry points into the system. And we certainly support and appreciate the bill's sponsor and the integrity of trying to make sure that our unhoused individuals have a starting point as they integrate into the various services, whether it's AB 310, pick your number. But I do think that this provides a great tool for our nonprofit organizations, especially to start getting to know people and and certainly helpful as it relates to the services that they can provide. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Please go ahead.
Chair, members of the committee, Jonathan Norman, Nevada Coalition of Legal Service Providers. I can't say it better, so ditto.
Thank you. Seeing no one else coming to the table in Carson City or Las Vegas, we'll move to the phones. BPS, is there anyone on the phone to provide support testimony for Senate Bill 317?
To testify in support of Senate Bill 317, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue.
Chair Peters, can you hear me?
We can. Please state your name and spell it for the record before you begin.
Thank you so much. My name is Noel Orozco. That is Orosco. I am the program manager at Silver State Voices, which leads the Nevadans Vote Coalition. Our coalition supports SB 317, as this bill allows a person experiencing homelessness to use a service provider's address to apply for public services, enroll a family member in school, apply for a job, and even register to vote and receive voting materials by mail. While some service providers and the USPS already offer similar options, this bill seeks to expand those options and ensure that people experiencing homelessness have multiple avenues. This bill is an important step towards ensuring that all individuals, regardless of their housing status, have equal opportunities to succeed and thrive. We thank Senator Scheibel for bringing this forward. Please support SB 317. Thank you.
Thank you. BPS, is there another caller?
Hi, good afternoon, Chair and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Will Pregman, Communications Director with Battleborn Progress. We're here in support of SB 317. We thank Senator Scheibel for bringing this forward. This bill would allow a person experiencing homelessness to use the provider services as a temporary mailing address. Currently, people experiencing homelessness can face major difficulty applying for jobs, housing, education, receiving mail, and other basic functions of living that most of us take for granted. These amenities are key to someone who is unhoused making the transition to get back on their feet. We should be doing everything to facilitate this transition in a positive way, especially as the economic fallout of the pandemic continues. Thank you very much. We urge you to pass SB 317. Thank you.
Thank you. Next caller, please.
Chair, there are no other callers to testify in support at this time.
Thank you so much. We'll move into opposition testimony. Is there anyone in Carson City or Las Vegas to provide opposition testimony to Senate Bill 317? Seeing no one come to the desk in either location, BPS, is there anyone on the public line to provide opposition testimony for Senate Bill 317?
Chair, there are no callers to testify in opposition at this time.
Thank you so much. We'll move into neutral testimony. Is there anyone in Carson City or Las Vegas to provide neutral testimony on Senate Bill 317? Seeing no one coming to the tables, BPS, would you check the public line for neutral testimony on Senate Bill 317?
Chair, there are no callers to testify in neutral at this time.
Thank you so much. Would you like closing remarks? Waiving closing remarks. We will close the hearing on Senate Bill 317. That gets us through our hearings for today, and we will move into our last agenda item, which is public comment. We'll start with public comment in Carson City and Las Vegas, and then move to the phones. We do limit public comment to 2 minutes for everybody, so everyone has an equal opportunity to speak to the body. Seeing no one come up to the desk in Carson City or Las Vegas, BPS, would you check the phones for public comment today?
Chair, the public line is open and working, but there are no callers at this time.
All right. Well, guys, I'm getting you out of here a little bit early today. We have 3 hearings on Friday. We are going to start a little bit early, around 12:30, I believe, is what we're agendized for, so that we can try and get folks on their way home at a reasonable hour on Friday, so we can have a wonderful Mother's Day. And with that, we are adjourned.